just last night. The one you call Horse's Ghost, killed.
Native Americans have undoubtedly secured their place in history as one of the toughest tribes to walk the face of the earth. Instead of being easy prey despite being surrounded by the unforgiving and harsh landscape of the Wild West, they built themselves to become pros at survival. Join us as we uncover the ancient wisdom that still holds valuable lessons for our modern world, revealing timeless strategies for resilience that helped Native Americans survive the Wild West. The Wild West era, also known as the American frontier, refers to the period of westward expansion in the United States, primarily during the 19th century. This era is generally considered to have begun in the early 1800s and lasted until the end of the 19th century, with the closing of the frontier officially declared in 1890. Geographically, the Wild West encompassed vast and diverse regions west of the Mississippi River, including the Great Plains, the Rocky Mountains, the Southwest, and the Pacific Coast. States such as Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Montana, and California are often associated with this iconic period of American history. Living in the Wild West was challenging. People faced many dangers and had to deal with a tough environment. The land included deserts, mountains, forests, and plains, each with its difficulties. The weather could be extreme, with hot summers, freezing winters, and violent storms. Besides nature's challenges, there were also dangers from wild animals like bears, wolves, and snakes. Finding enough water and food was a constant struggle, and medical help was hard to come by if someone got sick or injured. There were also conflicts between settlers and Native American tribes, and lawlessness in frontier towns. Bandits, cattle thieves, and land disputes made life even more dangerous. Native American tribes had lived in these challenging environments for thousands of years before European settlers arrived. They developed amazing survival skills to live in harmony with nature. Each tribe had special ways to hunt, gather food, build shelters, and travel across the land. For example, the Plains tribes like the Sioux and Comanche were excellent horse riders and buffalo hunters. Buffalo provided them with food, clothing, and materials for their homes. Living in the desert, the Apache knew how to find water and food in the dry landscape. Tribes in the Pacific Northwest, such as the Haida and Tlingit, were expert fishermen and built strong canoes to navigate the waters. The survival skills of Native Americans are still valuable today. People now recognize the importance of their knowledge for sustainable living, protecting the environment, and teaching survival skills. Many traditional practices are being used in modern survival training and outdoor education. For example, survival courses teach how to start a fire without matches, just like Native Americans did. Knowledge about which plants are safe to eat and which can be used as medicine is important for natural health practices. How Native Americans hunted, fished, and cared for the land is now being used to help protect the environment. Overview of Native American tribes in the Wild West. The Native American tribes of the Wild West were diverse and spread across vast territories, each with distinct cultures, languages, and survival strategies adapted to their unique environments. Among the numerous tribes that inhabited this region, the Apache, Comanche, and Sioux were some of the most prominent. The Apache tribe, known for their fierce independence and warrior culture, inhabited present-day Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Texas. They were a nomadic people, relying on hunting, gathering, and raiding for sustenance. The Apache were divided into several sub-tribes, including the Chiricahua, Mescalero, and Lipan, each with its distinct territory and leadership. Their adaptability and knowledge of the harsh desert landscape allowed them to thrive in an often unforgiving environment. The Comanche, originally part of the Shoshone tribe, migrated southwards from the northern Rocky Mountains into the southern plains, covering present-day Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. Known as formidable horsemen, the Comanche developed a reputation as fierce warriors and skilled traders. Their ability to dominate the plains was largely due to their expert use of horses, which they acquired in the late 17th century, transforming their mobility and military tactics. Comanche's extensive trade networks and raiding practices significantly influenced the region's social and economic landscape. The Sioux, a confederation of tribes comprising the Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota, were primarily located in the Great Plains, encompassing parts of North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, and Nebraska. The Sioux were known for their complex social structures, rich cultural traditions, and powerful warrior societies. The Lakota, in particular, played a crucial role in European settlers' resistance against westward expansion, most notably in the Battle of Little Bighorn. The Sioux's deep spiritual connection to the land and semi-nomadic lifestyle, centered around buffalo hunting, defined their interaction with the environment. Geographic distribution and territories. Where Native American tribes lived depended on the natural resources and climate of the region. Each tribe had different ways of surviving based on their specific environment. The Apache lived in deserts and mountains, knowing exactly where to find water and edible plants. Their territories included deserts and highlands, each requiring different survival skills. The Comanche lived in the wide, grassy southern plains, perfect for their nomadic lifestyle. They followed the buffalo herds and used horses to travel quickly and easily across the open plains and river valleys. Conversely, the Sioux lived in the large prairies and near rivers in the Great Plains. They moved with the buffalo herds, which provided them with food, clothing, and tools. Their land included grasslands and forested areas by rivers. Hunting and gathering techniques in Native American survival skills. One of the most critical skills for hunting was the ability to track prey. Native American hunters were adept at reading the subtle signs left by animals. Footprints or tracks were the most obvious indicators. Hunters could determine the type of animal, its size, and sometimes even its health by examining footprints' depth, shape, and pattern. For example, a deer's hoofprints could indicate whether it was running or walking, and the spacing between tracks could provide clues about its speed and behavior. Beyond footprints, hunters also looked for other signs, such as broken branches, displaced leaves, and droppings. These indicators helped them piece together the movements and habits of their prey. Additionally, scratch marks on trees and the presence of fur or feathers could reveal the type of animal and its recent activities. This meticulous observation and interpretation of signs allowed hunters to track animals effectively across varied terrains. Once you've found your animal, you must get close without being noticed. This is where moving silently and blending in with the environment comes in. Hunters moved slowly and carefully, stepping lightly to avoid making noise. They also wore clothes that matched their surroundings, like animal skins or plant-based materials. Sometimes they even covered themselves with mud or leaves to stay hidden. Let's not forget the powerful bows and arrows of Native Americans. Bows were typically made from flexible woods like ash or hickory, and the strings were crafted from animal sinew, plant fibers, or rawhide. Arrows were carefully fashioned from straight, lightweight wood and tipped with sharpened stone, bone, or metal points. The skill of the archer was paramount. Hunters practiced diligently to achieve accuracy and power, enabling them to take down the game from a distance. The bow's design and the type of arrowhead used could vary depending on the prey. For instance, broadhead arrows were ideal for large game like deer or elk, while smaller, more precise points were used for birds and small mammals. Before the widespread use of bows and arrows, spears were a primary hunting weapon. Spears were long and sturdy, with sharpened stone or bone tips. They could be thrown by hand or used with an atlatl, a tool that acted as a lever to launch the spear with greater force and distance. The atlatl consisted of a handle with a notch or hook at one end where the base of the spear rested. By flicking the atlatl forward, hunters could propel the spear much farther and with more velocity than by throwing it by hand. This increased the chances of a successful hit and allowed hunters to target more dangerous animals from a safer distance. Gathering edible plants and herbs. While hunting was important, gathering plants was also a big part of finding food. Native Americans knew a lot about plants. They could identify which were safe to eat and which were not. For example, they picked nutritious berries, nuts, and roots and avoided plants with a bitter taste or milky sap, which could be poisonous. This expertise also extended to medicinal plants, which were used to treat various ailments and injuries. Knowing when and where to find different plants was key. Different plants were ready to be picked at different times of the year. In the spring, they gathered young shoots and greens. In the summer and fall, they picked fruits and nuts. In the desert, the prickly pear cactus was a favorite. Even though it's covered in sharp spines, Native Americans knew how to pick the pads and the fruit carefully. They cooked the pads and ate the sweet fruit, which was delicious and juicy. Mesquite trees grew in the southwest and were like a hidden treasure. Native Americans ground the mesquite pods into flour to make bread or porridge. They even roasted the seeds to drink like coffee. Pine nuts were a tasty treat found in the fall. These small seeds were packed with energy. Native Americans roasted them or ground them into a meal to use in many dishes. Another important category of wild edibles is the berries. One is buffalo berry, found on the northern plains. Tribes like the Lakota gathered these berries. They were dried for winter or cooked into yummy sauces. Then there is elderberry, which was turned into jams, syrups, or drinks. Native Americans loved their sweet and tart flavor. How did they know? Native Americans were great observers. They watched which plants animals ate and which they avoided. By trying different plants and seeing how they felt afterward, they figured out which ones were safe to eat. They always respected nature, taking only what they needed and leaving enough for the plants to grow back. They used preservation methods to ensure they had food all year round. They dried fruits and seeds in the sun and smoked meat and fish to keep them from spoiling. This way, they could store food and have enough to eat even in the winter. Shelter and clothing. Native American tribes, with their profound connection to the land, developed sophisticated methods for constructing shelters and creating clothing that ensured their survival. Tipis were iconic, conical tents primarily used by the Plains tribes such as the Sioux, Cheyenne, and Blackfoot. Constructed from wooden poles arranged in a circle and covered with animal hides, typically buffalo, tipis were remarkably portable. This portability was crucial for tribes that followed the seasonal migration of buffalo herds. The tipi's design allowed for easy assembly and disassembly, making it an ideal shelter for a nomadic lifestyle. Wickiups, used by tribes such as the Apache and the Shoshone, were dome-shaped shelters constructed from a framework of flexible branches, often willow, covered with grass, reeds, or brush. Unlike the tipi, wickiups were semi-permanent and provided excellent insulation. Their design allowed for a warm, dry interior even in harsh weather conditions, making them suitable for tribes with more stationary lifestyles. Sedentary tribes like the Mandan and Hidatsa also used earth lodges. These large, dome-shaped structures were built using a framework of wooden poles covered with layers of earth and sod, providing excellent insulation. The thick earthen walls kept the interior cool in summer and warm in winter, demonstrating an advanced understanding of thermal regulation. Earth lodges could house multiple families, fostering community and shared living. Then we have the lean-tos, which are simpler, temporary shelters constructed by propping up a series of poles against horizontal support and covering them with branches, leaves, or bark. These shelters were typically used for short-term stays, such as during hunting trips. Lean-tos provided quick, effective protection from wind and rain and were easy to construct from available materials. Native Americans used everything nature provided to build their homes. They used strong, straight branches from trees like cedar and pine for the frames of their shelters. They covered their homes with whatever materials were available, such as buffalo hides on the plains or grass and leaves in the forests. Keeping warm or cool was important. With their thick walls of earth lodges kept out the cold and heat. The shape of the tipi helped it stand strong against the wind. Hides on tipis overlapped to keep rain out, and grass on wickiups was layered tightly. Sometimes they used animal fat to make their shelters waterproof. Clothing for survival. It would be improper to roam the harsh terrains and elements of the Wild West naked. For clothing, Native Americans used animal hides and furs. Buffalo, deer, and elk hides were super warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Rabbit and beaver furs were especially good for making cozy winter clothes. These materials were strong and lasted a long time. The process of turning animal hides into wearable clothing involves several skilled techniques. Tanning, the process of treating hides to preserve them and make them soft and pliable, was essential. Native Americans used natural substances such as tree bark and animal brains in the tanning process, making the hides more resistant to water and wear. Sewing was another crucial skill, with ligament, a tough fibrous tissue from animal tendons, used as thread due to its strength and durability. Clothing was often adorned with intricate beadwork, quillwork, and fringes for decorative purposes and to improve functionality. For example, fringes helped wick away rainwater, keeping the clothing drier. Fire-making and cooking. Among the essential skills required for enduring the harsh and unpredictable conditions was the ability to make fire and cook food. Friction-based techniques were among the oldest and most reliable fire-making methods used by Native Americans. The bow drill and hand drill were two primary tools in this category. The bow drill was like a primitive hand-crank fire starter. It had a bow, a curved stick with a string, a spindle, a straight stick, a fireboard, a flat piece of wood with holes, and a socket, a stone or piece of bone. You moved the bow back and forth, which made the spindle spin quickly against the fireboard. This created enough heat to make an ember, which you could use to start a fire. The hand drill was a simpler, yet more labor-intensive method. It involved using a straight stick, the drill, and a fireboard. The drill was placed on the fireboard, and both hands were used to rotate it rapidly by rubbing the palms together. The friction produced heat, eventually creating an ember. This technique required considerable skill and endurance but was effective for those who mastered it. Flint and steel were another widely used fire-making method in the Wild West. This technique involved striking a piece of high-carbon steel against a flint rock. The impact generated sparks caught on a piece of charcloth or other easily ignitable material. Once the spark caught, it was gently blown on to produce a flame. Flint and steel was preferred because it was relatively quick and reliable, even in adverse weather conditions. Cooking methods and tools. Open flame cooking was common in the Wild West, offering a straightforward and versatile way to prepare food. Meat, fish, and vegetables were often cooked directly over an open fire or on hot coals. Skewers made from green branches were used to roast meat, while flat stones placed near the fire served as makeshift griddles for baking bread or cooking other food items. Cooking over an open flame requires constant attention to prevent burning and to ensure even cooking. The ability to control the fire's intensity and the positioning of the food was crucial for successful open flame cooking. Stone boiling was used to cook food when metal pots were unavailable. Stones were heated in a fire until red hot, then carefully placed into a container of water, often a hollowed-out log or a tightly woven basket. The hot stones heated the water, bringing it to a boil and cooking the food. This method was particularly useful for soups, stews, and other liquid-based dishes. Clay ovens, also known as earth ovens or pit ovens, were another innovative cooking method. A pit was dug in the ground and lined with stones. A fire was built inside the pit to heat the stones, and once the fire burned down, food wrapped in leaves or placed in clay pots was added. The pit was then covered with soil to trap the heat, cooking the food slowly and evenly. This method allowed for baking and roasting and was ideal for preparing large quantities of food. Food preservation. Preserving food was essential for survival in the Wild West, where resources could be scarce and fresh food was not always available. Smoking and drying were two effective methods for preserving meat. Smoking involved hanging meat over a smoldering fire for an extended period. The smoke and low heat dried the meat and infused it with flavor. This method preserved the meat and helped deter insects and other pests. Smoked meat could last several months, making it a valuable food source during lean times. Drying meat, also known as making jerky, was another popular preservation method. Thin strips of meat were hung in the sun or placed on racks near a fire to dry out. The low moisture content prevented bacterial growth, extending the meat's shelf life. Dried meat was lightweight, easy to transport, and provided a reliable source of protein. In addition to smoking and drying, various storage methods were employed to ensure food remained edible for long periods. Pemmican was a traditional Native American food made from dried meat, fat, and sometimes berries. The ingredients were pounded into a dense, nutrient-rich mixture that could be stored for months or years. Pemmican was highly valued for its energy content and portability, making it an ideal survival food. Another mode of preserving food was caching, which involved burying food in the ground to protect it from animals and weather. People used clay pots, animal hides, or bark containers and buried them in cool, dry places. This method kept their food safe and ready for when they needed it. Navigation and orientation. Native Americans relied heavily on celestial bodies to guide their journeys. The sun served as a primary navigational tool during the day. By observing its position in the sky, they could determine cardinal directions. For instance, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, allowing travelers to orient themselves accordingly. When the sun is at its highest point at midday, it generally indicates true south in the northern hemisphere, a method known as solar noon. At night, the stars provided a reliable means of navigation. The North Star, or Polaris, was particularly significant for northern tribes. The star is located nearly directly above the North Pole, so it offers a consistent point of reference. By locating Polaris, Native Americans could ascertain north and thus orient themselves accurately. Additionally, constellations such as the Big Dipper were used to find Polaris, while others like Orion's Belt and the Pleiades served as seasonal markers, indicating the time of year and associated weather patterns. Native Americans paid close attention to landmarks like mountains, rivers, and large rocks. These natural features acted like road signs, helping them remember and find their way through familiar territories. They also looked for signs in nature. For example, moss often grows on the north side of trees. Animal trails could lead them to water sources, and the direction of the wind could help them navigate through forests and plains. Although most of their knowledge was passed down orally, Native Americans sometimes made simple maps. These maps were drawn on materials like bark or hides and showed important features like trails and water sources. They used easy-to-understand symbols that everyone in the tribe could read. More often, they shared directions through storytelling. Elders and experienced travelers would describe routes using landmarks and natural signs. These stories were memorable and helped everyone in the tribe navigate their world. Seasonal migration was an integral part of Native American life, driven by the cycles of game and plant resources. Understanding these cycles was essential for survival, as different regions offered varying resources throughout the year. Tribes would move to hunting grounds during specific seasons when game animals were abundant and relocate to areas with plentiful plant resources during harvest. For instance, the Plains tribes followed the migratory patterns of bison, moving their camps to coincide with the herd's movements. Similarly, tribes in forested regions timed their movements with the availability of nuts, berries, and medicinal plants. This migratory lifestyle required precise knowledge of the land and its seasonal rhythms, ensuring the tribe could sustain itself year-round. In addition to resource availability, seasonal migration was influenced by the need to avoid harsh weather conditions. Native Americans were keenly aware of the climatic patterns in their regions and adjusted their movements to minimize exposure to extreme temperatures and adverse weather. During winter, tribes would seek sheltered areas, such as valleys or forested regions, where they could find protection from the cold and access to fuel for fires. In contrast, summer months might see tribes moving to higher elevations or areas with ample water sources to escape the heat. This strategic movement ensured survival and maximized comfort and resource utilization. Health and medicine. In the absence of modern pharmaceuticals, the inhabitants of the Wild West turned to the abundant natural resources around them. Like we do today, these folks couldn't just walk up to a hospital when they got sick. Native American tribes, with their profound knowledge of the land, were especially adept at identifying and using medicinal plants. Some of the most common medicinal plants included Echinacea spp. Often used to boost the immune system and treat infections, Echinacea was prized for its ability to reduce the severity and duration of colds and flu. Willow bark, Salix spp. Known for its pain-relieving properties, it was used to treat headaches, muscle pain, and inflammation. The active ingredient, salicin, is a precursor to modern-day aspirin. Yarrow, Achillea millefolium. Yarrow was used for its anti-inflammatory and antiseptic properties. It was commonly applied to wounds to stop bleeding and prevent infection. Golden seal, Hydrastis canadensis. Used as a natural antibiotic and immune system enhancer, golden seal was effective in treating respiratory infections and digestive issues. The preparation and application of herbal treatments were meticulous processes that required knowledge and skill. Herbal remedies were often prepared as teas, poultices, or tinctures. Medicinal teas were made by steeping dried herbs in boiling water. For example, tea from echinacea roots was consumed to boost the immune system. Poultices were made by crushing fresh or dried herbs and applying them directly to the skin to treat wounds or inflammation. Yarrow poultices were used to stop bleeding and promote healing. Another form of treatment was tinctures, which involved soaking herbs in alcohol or vinegar to extract their medicinal properties. Golden seal tinctures were used to treat infections and improve digestive health. Shamanic traditions played a crucial role in the health and medicine of Native American tribes. Shamans were spiritual leaders and healers who used a combination of herbal medicine, spiritual guidance, and rituals to treat illnesses. Shamans believed that physical ailments were often linked to spiritual imbalances. They sought to restore harmony and balance within the individual through rituals, chants, and dances. Shamans possessed extensive knowledge of medicinal plants and their uses. They combined this knowledge with spiritual practices to create holistic healing approaches. Sweat lodges and purification rituals were integral to maintaining health and treating illnesses. Sweat lodges were small, enclosed structures where individuals participated in ceremonial steam baths. The intense heat-induced sweating was believed to purify the body and spirit. This practice treated various conditions, including respiratory ailments and joint pain. Purification rituals often involved smudging, where herbs like sage or sweetgrass were burned, and the smoke was used to cleanse the individual's aura and environment. These rituals were believed to ward off negative energies and promote healing. Maintaining good hygiene was essential for preventing illness in the Wild West, where medical facilities were scarce and living conditions could be unsanitary. Regular bathing and washing hands were crucial practices. Without modern soaps, natural substances like yucca root were used for cleaning. Ceremonies for hunting and gathering. Hunting was a critical survival activity, providing essential sustenance for many Native American tribes. However, it was not viewed solely as a means to an end, but as a sacred act that required preparation and respect. Before embarking on a hunt, hunters often participated in rituals designed to ensure success and maintain a balance with nature. These rituals included prayers, dances, and offerings to the spirits of the animals they sought. For instance, the Plains tribes performed the buffalo dance, a ceremonial dance to honor the buffalo and request its cooperation in the hunt. Rituals related to plant gathering often involved asking permission from the spirits of the plants and expressing gratitude for their gifts. Harvest festivals, such as the green corn ceremony of the southeastern tribes, celebrated the bounty of the earth and marked the beginning of the harvest season. These festivals included communal feasting, dancing, and religious ceremonies, reinforcing the connection between the community and the natural world. Water, a scarce and precious resource in many regions of the Wild West, was revered and respected. Native American tribes conducted rituals to honor water sources, seeking to ensure their purity and abundance. The Hopi people, for instance, performed rain dances to invoke the spirits of rain and ask for their blessings. Survival wasn't something they did alone. These ceremonies brought the whole community together. They shared stories, passed down knowledge, and strengthened their bonds with each other and nature. Imagine learning to fish or hunt from your grandparents. Native American elders passed down their wisdom through these ceremonies, teaching younger generations how to survive, respect the land, and live in harmony with it. If you love camping, exploring the outdoors, or want to know more about nature, these skills are super cool. Imagine building your shelter using branches and leaves, or knowing which berries are safe to eat. These skills are fun to learn and teach us how to work together and take care of each other, just like the Native Americans did. One of the coolest things about these skills is how they work with modern ideas. By using what Native Americans knew about nature and adding new technology, like solar power or recycling, we can better protect our planet. It's like using the best ideas from the past and present to make a better future for everyone. The Native American survival skills from the Wild West are like a treasure chest of amazing ideas for us today. They show us how to be smart with nature, be strong as a community, and live in a way that keeps our planet beautiful for generations. By learning from their wisdom, we can all be superheroes for our planet. Thanks for watching.